Today, the Honorable Linda McMahon appearing before the United States Senate ahead of her arrival as the Secretary of Education. President Trump yesterday had this to say about the Education Department.
Look, the Department of Education's a big con job. We're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th, but we're ranked number one in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, but we're ranked number 40. We've been between 38 and 40. The last time I looked, it was 38, and then I looked 2 days ago, it came out the new list. It came out at number 40. So
we're not doing great, in other words. Linda McMahon today testifying about the state of the Department of Education.
The bottom line is because it's not working. Department of Education was set up in 1980, and since that time we have spent almost $1 trillion, and we have watched our performance scores continue to go down. I do believe that it is a responsibility to make sure that our children do have equal access to excellent education. I think that that is best handled at the state level, closest to the states, working with state administrators, teachers, parents, who should have input into their curriculum.
That's right. It's time to empower parents and to actually generate good outcomes for students, and don't fill their head with garbage propaganda like they were born in the wrong body, you abusive ghouls. By the way, there was a protester today, at least there were a bunch of protesters today angry about this because they don't want the kids to get an education. Here's one moment.
Will you investigate those universities that are not complying with Title IX, that are not complying with the president's executive order? These universities are absolutely getting federal funds from this department, the department that you're going to run if and when you are confirmed, and I believe you will be. Will you investigate those universities and give them an ultimatum? Either they need to comply with the law, they need to follow the law of Title IX, they need to follow the rules issued by this administration, your department, or no federal funding. I mean, will you make sure that that the law is enforced?
Yes, we will make sure the law is enforced.
Very good. Let me ask you about...
I'm a teacher, and
the senator will suspend. The committee will come to order. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individual from the hearing room. Members of the audience are reminded that disruption...
I'm a teacher. Hopefully not for long. I hope you're fired, because that was very stupid, and it's not about helping kids at all. Joining us now to discuss all of this, Nicole Neily, president and founder of Parents Defending Education. Nikki, good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so why are people so angry about Linda McMahon? What's going on?
Well, I mean, gosh, she is actually threatening the education industrial complex. She doesn't want the money going to line their pockets. She wants it going into classrooms. How dare she?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there were people who were big mad at the hearing.
You know, it's not that often that you have a nominee for an agency who promises that their goal is to make the agency go away. That's a pretty unusual circumstance. But what is that a sign of, do you think, Nikki, about the state of education in the country?
I mean, right now, we're in our Doge era. This is cut, baby, cut. Forget drill, baby, drill. And so, it's funny because even in Bernie Sanders' opening remarks, he talked about how there's a need to make the department more efficient. And sir, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that the Democrats were in charge for 4 years. Why did you not care or hold them accountable for it being inefficient before? It's there's such illogic in all of their arguments.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. And it works against Bernie Sanders' entire socialist worldview. He thought if you concentrated more power into the government, it would make things better for everyone. Of course, the Department of Education is a textbook example of why he's wrong. Do you think that the federal Department of Education is not just failing to help students, but instead hurting them?
Yes, they are actively hurting people. I mean, to be fair, they only dole out about 10% of what local school districts actually get. But, they take federal tax dollars, they centralize it in Washington, skim money off the top for their 4,000 person, $88 billion bureaucracy, give the money back out to states and localities with a ton of strings attached. And then all those schools and districts have to, jump through hoops to comply and do all the reporting paperwork. Why don't we just give it directly to the states to deal with this? I mean, just cutting out the middleman and cutting out all the strings and the nonsense makes a ton of sense, because we as a country did very well before the creation of the department. When everybody seems to forget, It was only made in 1979. We won back-to-back world wars without a Department of Education.
You know, obviously, one of the other pieces here, you heard Linda McMahon talk about it a little bit. You heard President Trump sign an executive order to this effect. It's on school choice, that students and families should have the right to go to a better school. They shouldn't be chained to a failing school in their community. We just saw the nation's report card come out recently, and it had abysmal results for fourth graders and eighth graders. It's millions of kids who are functionally illiterate. These are the lowest scores we've seen since the early 90s, record lows. Really bad. But the one bright spot, Nikki Neily, private schools, Catholic schools in particular, apparently they're doing very well academically. In other words, these students should be entitled to a choice, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. And you know what? That puts competition or puts pressure on the public school system to actually be better because they have to compete for those butts and seats, right? I mean, schools get per pupil funding. And if you think, wow, I'm offering a crappy product, nobody wants it, they're leaving, maybe you might make a better product. But beyond that, families know what their kids' needs are. Children have different learning styles. Families have different values. And so this one-size-fits-all solution that the federal government is trying to shove down our throats is astonishing because, as you alluded to with the NAEP scores, I think the worst part is that the bottom fell out. It was the bottom 10, 25% where they got that much worse. Rich families have always had school choice. They can move. They can go to a better zip code. They can have a tutor. So this is really the Democrats being beholden to their special interest groups, to the teachers unions, and saying, no, you're going to be stuck here because that's how we want it to be, because that's what our allies, that's what they demand.
I know,
disgusting.
I know it's not academic related, but when I think about this difference between the haves and have-nots, really, the left always wants to get rid of school resource officers from the schools. They don't like police being there to protect the kids. Yet all of the private schools that these rich lefties send their kids to, they have private security. So the government schools, your kid's not entitled to security, but at the private schools, they are.
No, and I even think about, like, in Columbus, there was a couple years ago, some scores came out from LeBron James's charter schools, and, proficiency scores were not great, but families were still choosing to put their kids into those schools. And, families have different reasons for that. Maybe it's because their kids don't have to go through a metal detector when they walk in. Maybe it's because there are, a more supportive community around them. It doesn't matter what a family's reason for wanting a different option is. But people are entitled to make decisions about what fits their needs. And the fact that Democrats are fighting this tooth and nail, that they are trying to preserve this status quo, is so mind-boggling, because the status quo, as Secretary McMahon said, has failed. It is failing, full stop.
Let me play some audio from one of the people who's been benefiting from the current corrupt arrangement. That's Randy Weingarten, one of the teachers unions head bosses, on CNN this morning.
So what we're hearing is just complete chaos and, frankly, a whole bunch of cruelty. Because at the end of the day, you can make departments more efficient. And I'm not a big believer in bureaucracy, but this feels like, as Elon Musk said to you, evisceration. So here's a guy who has hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts from these departments, and he's not touching them. But what he's doing is really taking money from kids who really need it in the field. And these departments, yes, they can be much more efficient, but that's what the education department does. It gives out money to kids so you can feed them a decent lunch, so we can have, tutors for reading, so you can actually help kids with math problems. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on right now.
Randy Weingarten says she really cares about the kids. Meanwhile, she's taking well over $500,000 a year from all of the teachers' dues. Why is she so worried about all of this? If the government's just going to send the money back to the school systems, why couldn't she continue to skim money off the top from the teachers?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that they're talking about efficiency and bureaucracy, because all the Democrats, when they were asking their questions today, all I heard was them asking about preserving the bureaucracy. What about the department employees? They're living a culture of fear. There weren't any Democrats that actually asked about children and how that would affect them, right? And so that really shows where their priorities are. I mean, a lot of these programs were in place, IDEA, designed to help special needs children, et cetera. That, again, predated the department. And those programs are administered by the states. And so why do we have all these people in D.C. doing nothing but adding problems? Yeah. I mean, the fact that the department alone has 100 comms officers is kind of mind-boggling. Like, what is that doing? How is it helping children learn?
It's not. It's a stupid jobs program for the left. Hey, so When you mentioned a moment ago that the federal government doles out something like 10% of all of the education dollars across the country, so it's 1/10 of the money, but it's a lot of money. We're talking a lot of money that's going out the door, and some of these school systems, particularly in our area, Nikki, are in open revolt right now against the Trump administration attempting to improve educational outcomes for kids in these government schools. How effective do you think that federal threat is, that we're going to remove your federal money? How effective will that be to get these out-of-control school districts to, comply?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're starting to see a lot of resistance. I mean, those days are back. And so I think, frankly, there's going to have to be some school districts or universities or all of the above where you're making an example of them. Let's think back to how the Obama administration had just the threat of pulling federal funding for a Title IX investigation at the University of Montana in, I want to say, 2005, maybe 2015, sorry. That forced every school in the country saw that investigation, got freaked out, and decided to sacrifice the First Amendment on the altar of Title IX. And so I think even just the mere threat or starting an investigation that might lead to a loss of federal funding on some of these issues, hopefully we'll start to make some of them, jump into compliance. I mean, Initially we saw the Virginia High School Athletics Association say, no, we're going to keep the trans athletes in place. They just backtracked. A bunch of the other states, Minnesota, same thing. Because I think they're realizing President Trump does not come to play. He comes to get things done, and he has no qualms about actually saying, no, this is, he's a businessman. And so I think they should be scared, and I think they will have to be consequences,
Yes.
and then we'll see some compliance.
Do you think President Trump should go to a school board meeting to deliver the news?
Yes, I saw somebody on Twitter actually remind people that, he owns property in Loudoun. He could go to a Loudoun County School Board. Remember when Matt Walsh rented the apartment so that he could go speak at the school board meeting? I mean, he's a property owner in Loudoun County. Like, let's go.
That was Scott Smith, who was treated like garbage by Loudoun County. He's the one who did point out that, Trump actually owns property already there, so he doesn't even have to go through the process to speak at the Loudoun County School Board meeting. He should do it. I think it'd be the best. And, really scare the hell out of him, which will bring me joy. Hey, thank you very much. Nicole Neily from Parents Defending Education. Thank you, as always, for all of your work.